They promised bigger refunds, but what Gwen Moore just exposed about this tax bill will make you question everything you are told.
Thank you so much, gentlemen from California. And I tell you, I've never celebrated tax day until today, because I have the distinguished opportunity to comment once on the one big ugly billionaires bill. And it's a gift that keeps on giving, because I get to talk about how much this tax bill fails to deliver on its promises. Most glaringly, Republicans have promised that the average tax refunds would increase by over $1,000. Not so much. In fact, refunds are 65% less than promised. And refunds are nowhere near enough to cover the additional costs that Americans are facing because of other failed Republican policies. Even considering the crumbs from the American table that Republicans have tossed to working families, this pales in comparison to the increased costs of health care, food, utilities, gasoline, the higher cost of almost every product. And then, on top of all this, Americans are facing the $1.2 trillion cuts in Medicaid, and they see their hospitals in urban areas and rural areas closing because of it. Food assistance has been cut by $187 billion. As we mark tax day this year, one thing is real clear. Republicans have oversold their legislative accomplishment and riddled it with gimmicks for the working class Americans while brandishing massive giveaways to millionaires and billionaires. Mr. Speaker, Republicans gave millionaires a tax cut that is 390 times the size of what they gave to workers and families making less than $50,000. But what about the no tax on tips? And no tax on overtime, they say. Number one, it's a temporary benefit, which is going to expire as soon as you reelect them. And secondly, it is a gimmick because it's not a total exemption. It phases out, and and they are much smaller reductions in tax liability than people are expecting. Let's be clear, the people who benefited most from the Republican tax bill do not get tips. The one big beautiful bill for billionaires made the benefits for billionaires permanent and made these tax on tips temporary. Republicans are so well known to be good at messaging, but this time they can't message their way out of reality. American families are feeling the pain every single day. And with that, I would yield back to the gentleman from California.
Reserved. The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
I yield 2 minutes.
What you just watched isn't just a critique of a tax bill. It's a breakdown of how political messaging can be used to sell a promise that doesn't hold up when it meets reality. Because when Gwen Moore calls this the big ugly billionaires bill, she's not just trying to land a punchline, she's trying to reframe how people understand what tax policy actually does and who it actually benefits. And to really get what she's saying, you have to look past the slogans and into the structure of the policy itself. One of the biggest promises was simple and easy to understand: bigger tax refunds for everyday Americans. That's the kind of message that sticks. It's clear, it's direct, and it feels tangible. But Moore points out something critical. Refunds aren't matching those promises. Now, here's where it gets important for viewers to understand something deeper. A tax refund isn't a bonus from the government. It's your own money being returned to you after overpaying throughout the year. So when politicians focus heavily on refunds, they're often shaping perception rather than addressing the underlying economic reality. And that reality, as Moore highlights, is that even if some people see slight tax relief, it's being overwhelmed by rising costs in everyday life: healthcare, food, gas, utilities. That's the part that doesn't show up in the headline numbers. Because tax policy doesn't exist in a vacuum, you have to measure it against the cost of living. If your taxes go down slightly, but your expenses go up significantly, you're not actually better off. You're falling behind. When funding for healthcare and food programs is reduced, the effects ripple outward. Hospitals in both rural and urban areas start to struggle. Families who rely on assistance face tougher choices, and the safety net that millions depend on begins to weaken. So even if someone isn't directly affected today, the broader system they rely on is being reshaped. And then comes one of the most striking comparisons she makes, the scale of tax benefits. If you want more breakdowns that go beyond the surface and actually help you understand how these policies affect your everyday life, subscribe to Blue Voice, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to see the bigger picture. Because understanding the truth behind the policy is the first step toward demanding something better.